Lee, you're muted.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, let's try this again. I want to welcome everybody to the Resident Family Support Council. This is the meeting that we have every other week, and with various topics, with the purpose being to empower people with information so that they can have the life that they need, want, and deserve while living in a long-term care community in Illinois. And everything that we bring to you is based upon a work group that we have, which is made up of family members, people who live in facilities, as well as ombudsmen that work throughout the state. So today we are going to be talking about care plans and how to be empowered with a person-centered care plan. But before we begin, Carrie, who is a part of the work group, is going to share some information with us about some that's near and dear to her heart and something we've talked about before a lot on these meetings that we've been having about essential caregiving and compassionate care and the pandemic and the effect that it's had. Carrie, you want to go ahead, and I think you should be able to share your screen.
Thank you. So I am part of the 12 family members across the country that we are calling ourselves the Essential Caregiver Movement. We are the ones that helped write the Federal Essential Caregiver Bill, HR 3733. And we have, with the help of lots of families across the country, we have published a book that has the stories of families from all through the pandemic and what they've been through. We are sending a copy, thanks to everyone's financial support and help, to every member of Congress and Senate. They start going in the mail today. Hopefully by this point next week, every member of Congress and Senate will have one of these books. Stephen's going to put it in the chat if you would like to order one. They are a true, this was a lot of work, and we put a lot of love and effort into it, and it was very heartbreaking at the same time to go through the stories that families sent us to tell what they've been through. But hopefully we can use this to educate legislators both on a state and federal level. Obviously we introduced a bill here in Illinois last winter that unfortunately never got out of committee, but we will be reintroducing it again come January with the help of Senator Tracy. And this book, whether you buy one for yourself or decide to share it with a state legislator, or if you know somebody in the media, any of the above can help. The book itself is like $6 something, I believe, $6 and change. Stephen's going to put the link up if you do. Oh, sorry, there it is, $5.94 plus shipping, and they are beautiful. The more of us that talk about this, the more we get it out, the better chance we get of passing this law to make sure our loved ones are never alone again, and that their rights stop being taken away from them. So, and if you have questions, let me know. We also have information on all the Illinois Caregivers website, and on our Facebook page, and on the National Caregiver for Compromise page. Okay, Lee, go ahead.
Yeah, just a real quick second, Carrie, I put the link to it in the chat, and you know, I read the one from Texas. There's a Texas only version of it, and it's powerful stuff. So I highly recommend getting this. I know I still need to order mine, but I'm going to, and I'm looking forward to getting it. Go ahead, Lee.
You're muted again, Lee.
Yeah, I know, and I'm trying to get, this isn't the right part of the slide. So let me stop my share and get back to where we need to go. I don't know why this keeps coming up. Okay. Oh, sorry about this. I had it all queued up and ready to go, and there we go. Okay. So today, last time, if anybody was on our call last time, you'll remember that we talked about, we had actually an administrator and we had a CEO or board member join us from a facility downstate Illinois that talked about person-centered care and their journey on what that looked like and their continuous journey on how to keep navigating what this looks like for people, because everybody's an individual. And when you are working with a long-term care community, there's a lot of individual people that live in these communities that all have individual personalized needs. And how does that play out? And how does that work? And so what we're going to talk today is about you being empowered yourself by looking at that care plan and being that strong advocate of yourself and using your care plan to get your person-centered care needs met. So what do we mean by this? What does this really mean? So let's start talking about that right now. At the end, then Carrie's going to come back into the conversation. She's going to share with us her own perspective of how she's done this with her loved one, her son, who's in a long-term care community, and how she has used that care plan to make sure that he gets the care that he needs, wants, and deserves. So to start with, information is power for people. That seems to be our mantra with these meetings, every time we have these meetings. So one of the things that I think it's important for everybody to realize is that there's different types of long-term care communities throughout Illinois. And I've listed on the screen for you right now what those facilities are. And so because of the different type of facility, it dictates what they refer to this care plan as. So having that language, having the proper language when you're talking with the community is important because it shows that you know what you're talking about. So that's the first thing that we want to make sure is that everybody's aware of that. So if you live in a skilled, intermediate, or in an Illinois veterans home in Illinois, it's referred to as a care plan. But if you live in an assisted living or a supportive living, it's referred to as a service plan. If you live in a sheltered care, where there are not too many of those in Illinois, but if you live in sheltered care, there's really nothing specifically the way they refer to it. It does talk about having goals for the individual and having a record of care needs, but it doesn't label it anything specifically. And then specialized mental health rehab facilities, or what is more commonly known as a SMRF, they refer to that as treatment plans. And an intermediate care facility for developmentally disabled is referred to as an individual program plan. I've also heard it referred to as an individual service plan, but in the regulations, no, it's referred to as an individual program plan. And then medically complex for the developmentally disabled, it's called an individual habilitation plan. So like we said, it's important to understand how it's referred to so that you can be talking the same lingo as those that work in that facility. So we are going to be including in the chat, I believe Stephen has put it into that magical cloud for all of us, a handout that shares the links so that you can get to those regulations for all the buildings. And what that further goes on to define is how frequently these plans need to be reviewed for everybody. So for example, skilled, intermediate, and veterans home, those care plans have to be done within 48 hours of admission, and they refer to that as a baseline care plan. And that's supposed to include all the admitting information and start putting that into a care plan. And then it's supposed to be a work in progress for the next 21 days as the assessment process is happening. And then by that 21st day is when that care plan needs to be written. And then every 3 months thereafter, it gets reviewed. Or if something significant happens with the individual, it also gets reviewed. And it has to be updated at that time as well. So if it's for assisted living and supportive living, those get written upon admission, but then they get reviewed only every year. Or if something significant happens in the individual's life, to dictate a return to that plan, that service plan, and to update it. And it's important to know that with all of these, that's one of the criteria, is that if any changes happen in the individual's life, that we need to go back to those plans, those care plans, those service plans, those treatment plans, whatever it's referred to, and they need to be updated based upon those needs at that given time. So this isn't something that gets written and stays in place and doesn't get looked at. That's an important piece to know. It should be written and then updated as changes happen with the individual or as the individual desires for it to change. So let's talk a little bit about the meeting, because this is where we get a lot of questions from people. So what is this meeting supposed to look like? So when they have these meetings, these care plan meetings, and just for the sake of conversation, I'm going to refer to it as care plans through the course of this, so that I don't have to keep reiterating all the different types of language that it's used to represent in the different types of communities. So the meeting itself, the people that are involved in that meeting, you get to decide who you want in that meeting. For skilled and intermediate care, it does define that there needs to be somebody represented from dietary, somebody from social services, nursing, the nurse's aide, the physician, the resident and the family, any therapy services, if you have that, those have to be included, but you could also have other people included in that. And so let's say, for example, the maintenance man knows you really well. And you want the maintenance man there because he knows the way you like your daily routine carried out. You can have the maintenance man come to the meeting if you want. You can have the ombudsman come to the meeting if you want. You can have anybody you want attend that meeting. It's a meeting to talk about you. The other thing to know is that typically what you'll find about these meetings is that they take place, they're scheduled in 15-minute increments, which that is not a lot of time to talk about people's care needs, right? But we do have to understand that just as when you go to the doctor's office, many of us could go to the doctor and spend hours in the doctor's office with him, talking about all the things that we need, all our issues that are going on in our world, what it is that he could do to help us. But we're only allotted a certain amount of time to be able to talk with them. And typically that is about a 10 to 15-minute window for the physician. So when it does come to these meetings, many times you will see that they're scheduled in 15-minute increments. So, and then we also have to remember that there are other families waiting. So you might need more time. You might need more than 15 minutes, but to be respectful for the people that are behind you, that are coming in for that next meeting, so that they don't have to wait an hour for their meeting. If you need more time, make sure you let the facility know that. Let the facility know that I need more than 15 minutes. So can we please have more time that? And this might be very helpful, especially in the beginning, when you really need to make sure that they understand who you are. And you can, if you are in the middle of that meeting, and let's say they tell you you only have 15 minutes, you can at that point say, can we schedule another meeting so that we can have more time? It's about you. Do not hesitate to do that. And what you also may find is that sometimes you may not need all those people involved in the meeting. So if it's because, let's say you have a lot of dietary issues and dietary needs, you could ask for maybe just the floor nurse and the dietary supervisor to be involved in that meeting so that you can have those needs addressed. You might not need the activity person, the social service person in that meeting. So know that this is, the bottom line is you're empowered to have that conversation happen as you want it to happen. And if you need more time, make sure you make an appointment for more time. Like I said, the frequencies of these meetings really does depend on the type of facility, but remember, it can be reviewed and updated at any time. Does anybody have any questions in regards to meetings? If you do, go ahead and put them in the chat, okay? Or raise your hand, and I might not be able to see everybody's hand because I'm presenting. So if there is a hand raised, Carrie, could you just let me know, and then we can go ahead and get that question answered. So how to use your care plans and service plans effectively. I always say it's rude to talk about people behind their back. So the person themselves, who this conversation is about needs to be at that meeting. Resident, the individual who's involved in that care plan, needs to be at the meeting. And this is an opportunity. You should be there to be able to help set your own goals and your approaches. I actually was involved in a conversation with somebody earlier today who said they got a copy of their care plan and it was not them. So they know what they need. They know how their approaches should be when it's coming to care needs. They know how they want to be dressed. They know how they want to be bathed. So the person should be able to be a part of this conversation and be able to help set what those approaches and or those goals look like. I also personally feel that it's really important for the nurse's aide, the individual who is most primarily responsible for the care of the individual, to be involved in that meeting, because they should be an extension of the resident, an extension of the individual. So they should be involved in that meeting, not only to impart information and share information, but also to help articulate some of those care needs about the resident. And they also know how that resident is doing best because they're working with the individual every day. So really make sure that you get that nurse's aide. Invite them to come to your meeting and tell them you want them at your meeting. You can use the care plan when the facility may disagree with the residents. This is something, as Ombudsman, we preach this to facilities all the time. So what might that look like? It might look like a person who has COPD and they want to continue smoking. And the facility is like, no, you can't smoke. You've got COPD. But if that person lived in the community and they wanted to continue smoking, they would be continuing to smoke. So the facility, sometimes we get into this quandary here where the facility is like, but we know it's not good for the individual, so we can't let them do it. But that person is an individual. They do have their rights, and they do have that right to be able to live their life the way they want to, even if as the facility, they may disagree with it. So this is where it's a prime opportunity for that facility and the resident to come together and write that care plan that just says how that individual can still have their need met. The facility is going to provide education to the person to make sure that they're fully aware and they made a conscious decision, but the person gets to have that right adhered to. And this relinquishes responsibility from that facility and that guilt from the facility, because it's up to the resident for how they want to live their life. And this, we have to remember that the care plans are basically the directions on how to care for each person as the individual that they are. So that should be the information that's included in there. And we're really going to talk a little bit more about that when Carrie shares more of her individual story about her son. And the other thing that it's important to understand is these computer-generated problem goals and approaches. Canned care plans is what they're referred to in the industry. You may have heard of it referred to as that, or they're just very generic type of looking care plans. It should be about you. It could start off generically like the person's a diabetic, but then it could go into more details about what puts that person maybe at risk for their sugar dropping low. And it should look for what the person then also has their desires built into it as well. So it shouldn't be this thing where the staff in a facility just look in their database for a problem area and they hit click and it generates a problem goal and approach. It needs to be specific for the individual who the care plan is on. So what it shouldn't look like. People talking about the person and the person has no input for the conversation. So if you attend a meeting and everyone's sitting around the table and they're talking about you and not asking questions to you, that's not an effective conversation. It shouldn't be staff saying, well, Mr. Jones likes this and Mr. Jones wants that. It should be Mr. Jones saying, this is what I want, this is what I like. Also, if you're caught up in a meeting and you don't understand what's going on, because there's a lot of technical language going on, that can feel very, very intimidating. I know I've been to the doctor's office with my mother, and my mother gets very intimidated when the doctor starts throwing around a lot of jargon. And so then that shuts her down and she doesn't ask questions. So you can ask them, could you please explain that to me? The other thing that you'll also find is there are a lot of acronyms for things. We've got the DON, we've got the MDS, we've got the ADLs, got a lot of initials for things that people don't necessarily know what they're talking about. Not knowing that does not mean that you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a person that comes from this medical world. So speak up and say, I have no idea what you're talking about when you're saying ADLs, which by the way, means activities of daily living. So it also shouldn't look like a bunch of department heads who are sitting in the room and they don't know who you are. It should be the people who care for you the most are in the room. So it shouldn't be this nurse that sits in an office all day long. That's the nurse in attendance at the meeting. It should be your floor nurse. She should be involved in that meeting. It should be the CNA, not the one who schedules all the CNAs, but the CNA who cares for you. It says in the regulations for nursing home, it needs to be a dietary staff member. It doesn't say it has to be the dietary manager. It could be the server that serves the tray at meals, who knows what that person likes and doesn't like. So these are the types of things that it should be. But if you're experiencing this, change, be empowered and change it. So we've also asked when preparing for this presentation, what does a plan really look like? So this is an example of what a care plan may look like. I'm going to go, I know everybody can read, but we do have some people that may also be on the phone. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. So the way care plans are set up is that they're set up usually with a problem and or a need. Then a goal is written based upon that problem or need. And then approaches or interventions are developed to help achieve that goal and eliminate that problem or address that need. So how does that play out in the real world? Here's a sample. So the problem or need could be expressed as, Mr. Jones is an insulin-dependent diabetic and has been informed that he should not have sweets at nighttime, but he still desires to have ice cream after dinner. He understands and articulated the risk involved, but he has made a person-centered decision to still have ice cream when he wants it. The goal then is Mr. Jones will have ice cream whenever he requests it. The approach, when Mr. Jones asks for ice cream, provide him with his personal desire independent of his diabetes. Provide Mr. Jones with educational materials regarding the effect of a spiked sugar level that could be caused by the ice cream. Nutritionist to periodically meet with Mr. Jones to discuss his diabetes and to share other ideas regarding the ice cream that he wants, including low sugar ice creams, while still respecting Mr. Jones' decisional capacity on what type of ice cream he wants. So this is one of those instances where the facility may disagree with what the resident wants. So if it's written out in a care plan and it provides those educational opportunities for the resident, the facility now can adhere and honor this person-centered request that Mr. Jones has. Another way it could look is something like this, and this is called an I-centered or I-person care plan. So this is what it could look like. Again, the problem, need, goal, and the approaches are listed. So instead you use the word I. So it would be, I would like tea instead of coffee at each meal. And the idea for the use of the word I is because it helps staff to individualize, to look at Mr. Jones as being a human being. Instead of making it abstract, the idea is that it makes them feel,
It's Tuesday.
Can everybody mute? If we can please make sure that everybody's muted, that would be helpful. Thank you. And then the goal would be, again, using that word I will receive tea at the onset of each meal as I desire. And the approaches or intervention inform all care and dining staff of Mr. Jones' desire for tea at each meal. Place a sign in the kitchen by the coffee or teapot to remind dining staff of his personal desire. If staff forget, Mr. Jones will remind the staff. If they persistently forget, Mr. Jones will inform the DON and dietary manager so they can remedy the situation ASAP. So that's what it could look like when we're talking abstractly. But what does it really look like in real life? And this is where I'm going to hand it over to Carrie. And Carrie's going to share what it looks like for her and for her son in the care community that he lives at. Carrie?
Okay, so first let's start with, let me answer a few questions that people have asked that were in the chat.
Okay.
So one of somebody said, how can you have people there? Ask, okay, whether it is you want somebody from dietary or you want the CNA there. You have to vocalize what you want for your loved one. You're also allowed to bring an advocate that is not the ombudsman if you choose, or another family member or a friend with you. This is about the resident. So the resident can choose who all is sitting at that meeting. And a lot of times it helps to bring somebody in with you that's another set of ears that is not as emotionally attached as the resident or the family member. Because there are times this does get very emotional, and sometimes it helps to have that neutral party, whether it is the ombudsman or somebody else. Somebody asked about what happens if they're not writing goals. Then you need to speak up and you need to say to them, hold on, this is not how it's supposed to be done. There should be very clear goals. Lee, will you let me share my screen again?
Yes, you should be able to share it. I think I set it up that you can share it.
Not while you're still sharing.
Oh, okay. I'll stop my share.
Yes.
There we go.
And
While you're setting that up, I want to just talk about the question asked about the meeting as well. Do know that that community that you're talking about, who asked the question, it is part of the regulations.
right, and that person that asked that questions, I know is at a skilled nursing for sure.
Okay, so there is a regulation regarding, and so when you ask that handout that Stephen put into the chat box, if you click on that and then you click on the regulation piece for the federal regulation, it will tell you. I would print that out and bring a copy of that to the facility and say, this is who you need to have at the meeting per the regulations. And the CNA they have to be involved in the conversation. And
Right.
They could say that maybe then we don't want them attending. The staff, the facility could say, would we talk to them beforehand? We don't have them at the meeting. Say, but I want them at my meeting.
Right.
Okay, so make sure.
And
you
even here, when you look at my son's goals, which are not, the goals that I'm showing you are not what you typically see in the average care plan. But these are things that are really important for him, for me, for him. I mean, he has a debit card. I want him to understand the accountability of what having a debit card means. So we have, goals in here that when he's out in the community, that he will save his receipts and somebody will help him add them up and they will tell mom. We have goals in here about, him knowing about healthier snacks because he's a type 1 diabetic who loves carbs. So we have those goals that are written in a way that are very specific. If you look like at the top goal, the staff is supposed to assist my son in checking his stuff and then looking and seeing what he has and text mom. So we're not waiting until he's out of soap, shampoo, and razor blades. They're supposed to let me know once a week, hey, what does he have left? And we have that in here about certain things, whether it is, he needs more soda for his mini fridge, or whether it is, personal grooming supplies. The other aspect that is done in his care plan, let me close this one and pull a different one. Oops, hold on, let me try that again. Sorry, that didn't work.
Carrie, while you're doing that, I just want to, for everybody to, so Carrie's son is at, you want to explain that he's in an
So he's
intermediate-
at an intermediate care facility for adults with developmental disabilities. So in our world, it is called an ISP or an IPP, but basically the same concept. It's just written a little different. So like things that are written here. At one point, we had a behavioral analyst that was in working with my son. And these were tools they came up with, some which they came up with, some I've come up with, to help the staff to know how to get my son to cooperate with them. You know, if you say to my son, dinner's in 10 minutes and we're eating now, he's not gonna eat dinner for you. It's just, that's who he is. But if you say, hey, Lynn, you know, this is what the choices are for dinner, what would you like? You're going to get a whole lot further. You know, it took a long time to get people to understand, stop asking him at 3 o'clock what you're going to want him to eat at 5:30 or 6, because A, he would rather be one of the last people to eat. He doesn't like being in the dining room when it's so crowded. And at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, he's not hungry. He has no clue. And you're going to get, I don't know, or no, I don't want dinner. So those kind of things are written in to make sure that people understand how to get him to work with them. You know, my son has a lot of fear of being dropped when people help move him or walk with him. So we tell people all the time, until you've built a relationship with him, and I'll pull up another screen, until you've built a relationship, he is not going to easily cooperate all the time to get you to do what you want. So, you know, they've taught the staff of, you know, how to work with him, how to ask questions and give him choices instead of telling them what they're doing. You know, the staff, there are lots of places in his plan that tells the staff, you know, talk to him about things that interest him. So you will get him to cooperate with you in the long run. And, you know, especially like the top one, if there's something that's going to change in schedule, change in a roommate, change in anything, you need to tell him ahead of time. He is one of those people who doesn't do change. So we have all these things written in to his care plan so people understand what my son needs for him. And I will tell you, his care plan is probably a little more extensive than the average. And I write a lot of the goals myself. And that's the other thing people don't understand. We, whether it's the resident or the family member, we have the right to write goals. And I'm very adamant about that. I do write goals to put in there, because otherwise, I don't feel like they spend sometimes enough time focused on what he truly needs. And when Lee talked about, you know, this, oh, everyone's using this care plan of who they're just going to pull ideas out of a computer program. Don't let it happen. When you see it, call them on it. I will tell you that people have a bad habit of trying to copy and paste from one person's care plan to another person's care plan, and they'll forget to change the name. And I've seen it more than once. Call them on it. That has nothing to do with your loved one. If they've copied from Sam's care plan to put it in Sammy's care plan, it is all should be individualized, you know. And we have a lot, everything in my son's is very individualized, and in his building it's done that way. For those of you that were here 2 weeks ago, you know, those were the directors from my son's facility. So that is their total concept of how they do things, but not everybody does it that way. So you have to advocate for your loved one, or the resident has to advocate for themselves. You know, I was helping somebody today, and they got me case notes out of their file for me to look at as I was helping them. And the things that were put in there were were appalling and shouldn't, you know. And this resident was smart enough to say, hold on, this isn't right. We're going to speak up and we're going to do something about this. And it's not always easy, but you got to have that conversation too.
There's a question then in the chat. What if the facility does not write requested interventions in the care plan? And to address that, so one of the things that we strongly advocate for is to get a copy of your care plan. Ask for a copy of it, because that way then from there you can make a very good assessment as to whether or not they're listening to you or not listening to you. And then if you see that they're not taking those interventions that you've asked for, do like Carrie said, write it out yourself. The language does not have to look all particular. It just has to make sense to people. So write out exactly what it is that you want and say, I need this put into my care plan. Please put it in. And could I please get a copy of it? And then give a time frame for when you would like that back. Don't just say, and could I get a copy of it? Because
No.
it may take a week, but no. Say, and could I please get it? I'll be back on Friday. I'd like a copy of it on Friday. Try to give a time frame to it.
And a lot of times, especially if they're sitting there doing it on a computer while you're talking, they should be able to produce it pretty quickly. You know, I mean, this is the one that we did 3 weeks ago on my son. And it's, I mean, granted, it's large. It has all of his, medical issues, his medications, everything else. We're probably talking 25 pages. But this way, everything is in one place for somebody to find it. The other important thing with the care plans, especially in the world we're living in now, if you are or have requested essential care or compassionate care, make sure it's written in that care plan. And if they tell you it's unnecessary, tell them, no, I want it written in that care plan. And the reason being, where you're telling people this is, if they give you any problems over your compassionate care or your essential care visits, and it's in the care plan, and we have to file a complaint with the state, the care plan is the one thing they always look at, whether it is a service plan, an ISP, a care plan. That's where the state is taking a lot of their direction for each resident from, for the surveyors. So the more you put in there, the easier it is for them to find it. So things such as essential care and compassionate care are really important. Even if it's things as simple as you normally take mom out every Sunday to go to church and have lunch. Even if that's not normally going on right now, I would have that put in your care plan. Because that way, as now it should be allowed to be going on. There's no reason anywhere in the state of Illinois that people should not be allowed to take their loved one out, because IDPH has said you're allowed to. So if you have those things built in, it makes it much more difficult, A, for the facility to tell you no, and B, for a surveyor not to find the deficiency with the facility.
So we want you to make sure that you're using your care plan as a tool for the care that you want, that person-centered care. And we're understanding, some people are saying that, the meetings just aren't happening. And we know the pandemic did kind of throw havoc into facilities and people coming into rooms together, which that's what a care plan typically looked like, was people coming into a room together. And they're usually smaller conference rooms, and there's a lot of people crammed together. So that was shut down on the dime. And because of that, some people then just started doing care plan meetings with smaller groups and not inviting everybody in together. That's not acceptable still. Just because it happened doesn't mean that it's acceptable. You need to make sure that these meetings are happening as they need to happen based upon the type of environment that you live in or your loved one lives in. And like I said, that reference sheet, which I can make sure I just sent it off to some person. I'm going to go ahead and paste it back in there because it kind of can get lost in everything. I just put it back in for everybody to be able to see that in the chat. You can click on it now, and then you can save it as a document for yourself. We'll also be putting that on our website so that you can have access to that as well. So if the meeting is not happening, please make sure that you are talking up about it. And if you can talk to your
even if you have to do it virtually, or you're doing it in person, but somebody else is going with you doing it virtually. There are families across the state in this past year that are, up in Chicago area and whatever, and I'm down by St. Louis, and I've attended care plan meetings with families to help them advocate for what they needed for their loved one. The Ombudsman can also do that, the same thing. It's just about speaking up. You will find some facility directors who don't want them done over Zoom or, other, platforms because, they don't want them recorded or anything else. They have to facilitate whatever it takes to make this care plan meeting work.
So I just also want to make sure that everybody understands about this revision piece. So if you have, let's say all of a sudden your daughter moves back into town. She didn't live in town and now you want your daughter wants to take you out for lunch every week. And this is something new. And you said your care plan a month and a half ago. And they're giving you resistance on that, or you want to make sure that it happens. You can request for that care plan that to be added into your care plan, that I desire to go out to lunch with my daughter every Wednesday. And the goal would be that you would go out for lunch and then the approach. Now it's put into that care plan. So you're held to be able to do it. So if they ever try to deny that access, you have that written down. Like Carrie said, it holds a lot more weight. So you don't have to wait for a care plan meeting to request for goals to be added into your care plan. Something like that wouldn't require a whole team meeting for people to get together. But if there's a significant change happening with you, you have a new diagnosis, or you have a new medication that you're being put on and it has a lot of side effects to it, then you may say, you know what, I want a full care plan meeting occurring because this medication is affecting, I don't want to eat anymore. It's making me more lethargic. I really want a care plan meeting to talk about this and the impact that it's having on the other entities that are also caring for me in the building, such as dietary activities, social services, and all of that. So I want to have a meeting to talk about this.
So I want to address something that's in the chat, Lee. So
Okay.
a lot of times with the care plans, they really cannot get them to you ahead of time. They can get you the old one for you to look at and see what you want to update. But majority of the times, they can't get you the new one until after you've had that meeting because they need everybody's input. But a facility saying to you, oh, we only will give it to you on a thumb drive because this is how we give patient data to people, that's unacceptable. There's lots of people who don't have a computer to plug that thumb drive into, or the means to print it out. Half of the world does everything they do on their phone. So they do need to make that accessible to you. The same way that if you request medical records, they only have so long to produce them. They do have the right to charge you if they're printing them. I mean, I personally have never been charged, but that's the worst case scenario. So they have the right to charge you a reasonable amount to print them. But a care plan, no, they should be giving you a paper copy, unless you're requesting it electronically.
And Carrie, to kind of finish off the question, when you make a request for records, your residents' records, and that includes the care plan, they need to be getting it to you within 2 business days of the request. So, if you're wanting to get it a week ahead of time, ask for it 10 days in advance of the care plan meeting.
And I highly suggest when you make requests of any of those kind that you do it in writing, whether it's by email or a hard copy. And if you're doing a hard copy, make sure you write down who you gave it to, what day you gave it to them, and what time, so you have some accountability to go back to. Because the most important thing with all of this is documentation.
I do, I am to address the concern about sending it to you like via email. I cannot speak myself, and I don't know if anyone else can, on the ability to be able to send because of the HIPAA information and the ability that could be hijacked or something. I don't know if that happens or not. I know we have to deal with issues like that in our, in the Department on Aging with security information and email, having secure email for that. So I don't know if that's something a facility can do or not do. Send electronically to you a copy of the care plan. I don't know I don't know if they're allowed to do that or
Right,
not.
well, and like this person who put it in the chat, they're saying they only want to give it to them on a thumb drive.
Okay.
That's
Yes,
not
but that brought that up to me, you
Yeah.
know, about
and
sending.
every facility is
notification.
going to be different about some of these things with you. And depending on what their, rules are based on how they do business. But, at the same time, you should be able, as a minimum, to be able to email the director or somebody, at least to give them your request.
Mhm.
And whereas like Stephen said, technically they only have 2 business days to get you the medical records, whatever you're requesting. At the same time, I tell people all the time, if you're asking for them to consider compassionate care, or you're asking for them to do something or get you an answer, always give them a timeline. I would like to hear back from you within 48 hours, or I would like a decision by the end of the day on Tuesday. It's really important to give them some accountability too, because otherwise they will try very much to sometimes forget about it. Not always on purpose, but accountability helps for everybody.
I'm curious if anybody that's on the call has received resistance from anyone in getting a copy of their care plan. I'm curious about that. I'm also curious if anybody that's on this meeting also has had difficulty in having these meetings scheduled as of late, if they haven't seen the meetings happening. I'm curious about that, because these are some things that we're hearing, throughout the state, and I'm curious about the amount that this is happening. So if people could if you want to either unmute and share that, or if you want to put that into the chat as well, that would be helpful information for us to know. Because one of the things that we do as in the Ombudsman program is we do try to speak to the powers that be and make sure that we carry information forward for any trends that we might be seeing in the state, so that these can be addressed at large with the long-term care facility people that work there. So
Leave Veronica on the phone. Hi, how are you?
great, Veronica.
Okay, just wanted to chime in just quickly with the care plan meetings. When the ombudsman is asked to come in, sometimes the facilities will rearrange the timing, because if they say you're going to have it at 2, and then the ombudsman says, well, I'm available at 2, they may say, oh, well, we're running late, just so that that ombudsman is not there to assist you. So what I did in that instance was ask them, well, since you can't have it at that time, to reschedule. So that is one of the things that is happening. And of course, getting a copy of the care plan, a lot of times they don't want you to do that without signing a medical records release form. And that medical records release form then has to go to their corporate office, then has to be printed out and sent over to come back to you on a thumb drive. I'm finding that they don't want to just give you a hard copy because you're standing right there with them, and you have the ability to ask questions about things that you see that are wrong immediately. So I feel that that is one of the reasons why they don't want to give you that hard copy right then and there. So you can ask for it, but you might have a problem getting it.
And if you are experiencing a problem getting it, I would encourage you, and I know, Veronica, you've done this, you've talked to the ombudsman to help them push for that to happen, because you should not be experiencing pushback. And part of this is the way I look at it is, why wouldn't you want me to know this information? Because I could help you. I could help save a lot of time for you by helping to write those approaches, by helping to make sure you truly understand the root cause of the problem or the need. I can help do a lot better work for you because I know myself, or I know my loved one. So I could really help give you a lot more information that you could care better, instead of you sitting back in an office and hypothesizing why I might not want to eat, And maybe it's because you're now on a puree diet and that looks like baby food. And it doesn't look like real food to you.
Well,
And
one of
that's
the,
what the person doesn't want to eat.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Veronica.
One of the issues that I am finding is that those care plans, and I've said it before, are kind of cookie cutter. They
Yes.
are mimicking 2 or 3 different people's care plans. So again, that's why they don't want you to see it right then, and they are kind of prolonging it because they are making mistakes in those care plans. And instead of striking out things so that you know that they have actually corrected them, they are going in and attempting to change things. And by doing that, a lot of times they are actually messing up the care plan that you actually want in place for your loved one. So we have to be very careful with them about telling them what we want them to take out, because sometimes they take out more than what you want them to take out.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen, like Carrie said, I've seen care plans where people, where it will say, because it's a canned care plan, or like you said, a cookie cutter care plan, where it will say he/she, and the person is not a he/she individual. They are a he or they are a her. And or they'll have, like Carrie said, they'll say she and the individual is a male. Because they are just using, it's easy to push a button and just hit and it prints across the board. And that is no way. That's why this is a person-centered care plan conversation. This is how to make it person-centered. Advocate for it to be person-centered. Someone shared with me earlier today how they had a fall just walking out in the community. And this fall, when they asked for a copy of their care plan, they got it back, and the care plan actually said that they had a change in medication, and that's why they fell. They said, I never had a change in medication. They were just justifying I just was negligent. I just tripped. That's all I did. And it wasn't a big deal. I tripped and I got up and I was better. But they tried to justify it by saying I had a medication change, and I never had a medication change. So now they just put on another layer of a problem that doesn't even exist for me. So that's why getting that copy of that care plan is really an important thing. That's the best way, in my opinion, that you can truly advocate for yourself. And then you can see, is it a cookie cutter care plan? Do they know who I really am? How can I help educate them on who I am as that individual to get the care that I need?
And a care plan shouldn't be as adversarial. I mean, people should be, the facility should be working with the resident and working with the family for what is the best thing for the resident. I think a lot of times people come into it, they're scared and they feel like their back's against the wall, so they have to be defensive. And that can happen on either side, whether it's the facility or the resident or the family. And sometimes it really just takes taking a deep breath and everybody having a conversation about what is the best thing for the resident. Because in the end, it is not what is easiest for the facility. It is not what is easiest for me as a mom. It is what is the best thing for my son. And the rest of it really becomes irrelevant. And it's hard, especially, I know when I've done some with people that are dealing with memory care facilities, there's also some misunderstanding of, the family member sees one thing, the facility sees another, and not everybody's on the same page until you can have that conversation happen. Because at that point, unfortunately, the resident isn't always able to add their input the way they could have 6 months or a year ago. And, so even sometimes just for the family member, that's difficult to have to sit and listen to what the facility is telling them until they can find their mutual ground.
And I think, Carrie, you bring up a good point, because I feel that it's a requirement to do those things, to do the service plan, to do the individual, service plan, to do the care plan. It's a requirement that's written in regulation. So I think many times as a long-term care provider, it's approached as this is a task that I have to do, not that I need or want to do, to because it becomes a task, not an opportunity to care for people better. We have to refocus, and we can be a part of that as well, helping the facilities refocus on what that care plan is truly about. It's not to get a paper compliance thing done that looks pretty, that then has care plan stuff in it or cookie cutter care plan in it. It's a requirement so that you know what I need. And so if you share that with me and I can help you do it better. I'm now helping you meet a requirement for that. It's something that you're required to do. I'm helping you meet that requirement in a really great way because it shows that you know me, because I was able to contribute to this. One of the things that frustrates me tremendously when I see care plans is those activity care plans. And I'm speaking to this as a recreation therapist who used to consult to activity departments. And it has that care plan on there that says the resident spends their day in their room and they need to do more. Well, who says they need to do more? You know, I mean, the person may not want to do more. They may be perfectly content being in their room. So now I just put an unnecessary need on the person. And then abstractly, they'll pull out of the cloud someplace that will say the resident will attend bingo. Well, I don't like bingo. I wouldn't want to attend bingo. If somebody would have come to me and said, what is your need for your quality of life, your engagement in this community? I'd say, you know what? This is how I want my day to look. I want to get up and have a cup of tea while I'm reading the newspaper. I want to be able to work in a Sudoku puzzle. I want to be able to binge watch some TV in the afternoon. I want to be able to go to church services. I want to be able to do that craft that you do every now and then, maybe not all the time, because I might not have a need for it. I want to be able to do jigsaw puzzles on my own. This is what I want. And then your care plan can just be that I will do one thing that has meaning and value for me each day. I can write that own care plan for myself. I just saved the facility a lot of work. Go ahead, Stephen.
So I just wanted to point out that we are getting down to the wire on our time. It's been a really good discussion. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss before we run out of time. So when you're looking at, as a family member, giving input to your resident, your loved one's care plan, remember that you're the family member. The resident has the ultimate authority as to what gets put in there. And like, you know, as Carrie is talking about writing her son's care plan, she's not just any family member. Carrie, are you your son's guardian or power of attorney? I can't remember.
I am power of attorney. He doesn't need a guardian, and we let him he makes as many choices with me. We make these choices together.
And that right there is key. Everyone it's not just anybody throwing in ideas to the care plan. It's the power of attorney working with the resident, putting things into the care plan. Another thing I wanted to point out, because I've had questions on this, is it legal for a facility to hold a care plan without a family member or without the resident? The answer to that is yes. It is legal. They are required to notify you of it. If you can't make it, you need to call the facility and say, hey, I can't make it. Or if your loved one says, what care plan? I don't know what you're talking about. That's a problem, and you need to reschedule the care plan for a time that works for you. So that's my 2 cents. We're at 4 o'clock, so we need to.
I have one thing. I want to make sure everybody's aware of the town hall meeting that we're having on residents' rights. That will be this Thursday at 10 a.m. I put the direct link. So if you want to copy that, then all you need to do is click on that link on Thursday at 10 a.m. and join the meeting. We actually have a couple of residents that will be joining us and talking about what residents' rights means to them. So I think it's going to be a really good meeting. So if you could please join us for that. We're very excited about that. Last time we had over 100 people join us. And so we're looking forward to all of you being on that and helping to support residents and Resident Right Month. And then the last thing is I want to make sure you put your zip code in the chat box. I am collecting those so we can see who around the state, what areas are participating in these. And then I'm going to launch our poll again for how beneficial did you find today's meeting? If you could just click on what you felt for yourself, that way then it helps us understand what topics people want and how you want those presented to you. So we really appreciate that. And it looks like people felt that this was a good conversation. So I'm excited about that we had everybody join us today. Our next topic is going to be, does anybody remember? Because I don't. Good question. I can't remember what our next topic is, but it will be on November 9th. Oh, I know what it is. It's going to be on
Guardianship.
guardianship, which was something that everybody on this call really wanted. We are going to actually be talking to the guardianship guru in the state, who's going to talk about the hows and the whys of guardianship. So please join us for that conversation on November 9th. And we're very excited that everybody joined today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I am going to end the poll now, and I am going to end the recording. And